Despite fate punishing him, I cannot bring myself to forgive him for the bullying. During my school days, I confronted the haunting reality of bullying, a topic widely discussed on TV and various platforms today. While bullying has become a buzzword in recent times, in my youth, it was synonymous with torment. I was consumed by sadness, finding solace in seclusion and concocting countless excuses to avoid going to school. However, the inevitable encounter with my tormentor awaited me. This tormentor was not an adult, but a boy my own age, a fellow classmate. This monster, by the name of Leosha, joined our class in the 7th grade. Like me, he stood out from his peers due to his reticence, and perhaps it was for this reason that we were initially assigned to the same desk. He appeared not merely silent, but also a battered soul, carrying emotional scars. I felt an inclination to help him in some way, to alleviate his pain. I attempted to establish a connection with Leosha, but he remained steadfast in his aloofness. Unexpectedly, one day, this enigmatic figure extended an invitation for a walk. Out of compassion, I couldn't decline, but circumstances forced me to do so as my parents, and I had planned a trip to our country retreat. Little did I know that this refusal would trigger a retaliatory wave of torment from him. Fate may have dealt its retribution, but I cannot find it in my heart to forgive him for the anguish he caused me. Leosha's torment took on new and insidious forms at school, exploiting any opportunity to make my life miserable. One day, he scattered buttons on my chair, and in my unwitting innocence, I sat right on them. But it didn't stop there. His cruelty escalated further when he decided to adorn my long hair with gum. When I returned home, tears streamed down my face as I struggled to comprehend why Leosha was acting this way. My mother, desperate to find a solution, had only one choice. She took me to the hair salon, where my once thick bun was transformed into a graceful curl. Little did I know that the mischievousness from the monstrous Alexei was far from over. Valentine's Day arrived at school, and girls expressed their affection through exchanging heartfelt Valentine's cards. Each desk would be adorned with a special box, where admirers could leave a token of their affection. Imagine my surprise when I found an adorable box next to my desk, accompanied by a note that read, "You like them." Regrettably, I couldn't resist the curiosity and opened the box, only to discover a lifeless mouse inside. While my classmates were left in a state of shock, I descended into a fit of hysteria, and Leosha reveled in his twisted amusement. Naturally, I knew exactly who had orchestrated this ghastly gift. Another night of tears ensued. The next morning, my puffy eyes caught my mother's attention, and she bombarded me with questions. Exhausted from enduring incessant insults, mockery, and Leosha's relentless torment, I decided to break my silence. Without hesitation, my mother stormed into the school to confront this troublemaker. To my surprise, Leosha offered a fleeting apology and promised not to harm me again. But his respite from tormenting me was short-lived. It seemed that Leosha was merely pausing to prepare yet another twisted surprise, specifically tailored for me. On the eve of New Year's Eve, our school organized a disco. Excitement filled the air as the girls and I dressed up, styled our hair, and eagerly made our way to the dance. The atmosphere was vibrant, and my eyes were fixed on my secret crush, unaware of my feelings. I longed to capture his attention. However, the night took an unexpected turn when Leosha suddenly appeared in the auditorium, grabbing the microphone and inviting everyone to an exhibition in the corridor. The girls and I exchanged uncertain glances, but followed the crowd. What awaited me in that corridor was a sight that made me wish the ground would swallow me whole. Erotic pictures bearing my face were plastered on every wall. The shame overwhelmed me as laughter filled the air, even from the one I admired. I stood frozen, consumed by humiliation. It was a montage meticulously orchestrated by Leosha. The episode haunted me, and the laughter persisted for a long time. It became clear that I couldn't endure it any longer, so I pleaded with my mother to transfer me to another school. It was a necessary decision, as the fragile state of my young psyche would not have survived otherwise, leading to potentially tragic consequences. Over a decade has passed since those harrowing adventures. I successfully graduated from high school and am now pursuing a master's degree. The memories of Lyosha linger like a haunting nightmare. There have been occasions when I encountered him on the street and desperately tried to avoid him, but fate seemed determined to bring us together. On one such encounter, Lyosha hurled a single phrase at me: "I loved you, and you never even wanted to go out with me. You're just like my mother." Later, I discovered from former classmates that Lyosha had taken a dangerous path, resorting to robbery, which eventually led to his imprisonment. Yet, I couldn't find an ounce of pity within me, for he had reaped what he sowed through his countless misdeeds. Andrew sat alone at the table, reflecting on the life-altering events that had unfolded before him. The sudden collapse of his seemingly perfect world left him bewildered. He took a sip of his drink and nibbled on a pickle, immersing himself in memories. Towards the end of autumn, Andrew returned home with a heavy heart, plagued by a persistent cough that had plagued him for 3 days. Colleagues at his office had dropped hints, urging him to see a doctor. As he entered his apartment, he found his wife, Marina, bustling in the kitchen, preparing dinner. She immediately sensed his somber mood and inquired, "Trouble at work?" Andrew didn't mince words and shared the details. Marina had been insisting for the past 2 days that he should see a doctor, as she was concerned about his cough. Wanting to avoid an argument, Andrew promised that he would visit the doctor the next day. Just then, their children, a 14-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son, returned home from their outing, giggling and running into their bedroom. Andrew looked at them affectionately, filled with love, before turning his gaze towards his wife. Deep in his heart, he acknowledged how incredibly fortunate he was to have found such a wonderful partner. Beautiful, adept at managing their household, a caring mother, and a loving wife. The following day, Andrew went to the health center, where he obtained a referral for an X-ray. A disheartening diagnosis awaited him from the physician: lung inflammation. Here's a referral for hospitalization. Reluctantly, Andrew made his way to the hospital. The persistent cough had left him no choice. He was assigned to a 6-bedroom, where his bed was positioned near the window, across from the door. Settling into his spot, he reached for a book to pass the time. However, before he could read a single paragraph, the door swung open, revealing a nurse standing in the doorway, who spoke. "Are you Andrei Evgenievich Vsevolensky?" "It's me," the man murmured, holding his breath. Before him stood an incredibly beautiful girl with captivating blue eyes and sensual lips. Andrew immediately noticed that she didn't even need cosmetics to enhance her beauty. It was all natural. "I'll inform you about the doctor's prescription for you, so you're aware," the young woman in the white coat said. In response, he simply nodded. He realized that he had fallen in love with the nurse at first sight, a concept he had never believed in before, but now he found himself trapped by it. Andrew gazed at the girl, whose name he learned was Ekaterina, and he didn't hear a word she said. In that moment, all he wanted was to hold her, as she unintentionally stirred his emotions. His thoughts were interrupted by the nurse's words. "Andrei Evgenievich, are you listening?" "Yes, of course. Your beauty has captivated me, and I got lost in my thoughts," the man replied softly. Catherine smiled and left the room. He tried to dismiss thoughts of the girl, but they lingered. He attempted to convince himself that he had a family, a wife and children, but his mind refused to accept that reality. He couldn't shake off the illusion and told himself that it would pass. He just needed to be patient. He spent a couple of days in the hospital, yet his feelings didn't wane. They grew stronger with each passing moment. He discovered that the nurse was married to a man named Leonid, who was 32 years old. They had been married for a year. Andrew often caught glimpses of Ekaterina being greeted by her husband after her shifts through the window. During those moments, a burning jealousy consumed him, wishing he were the one who possessed her love. He made every effort to capture the girl's attention, but realized that his efforts were in vain. Although she seemed receptive to his advances, she never provided any indication for a deeper connection. As it was time for his discharge from the hospital, he suggested exchanging phone numbers to keep in touch, saying, "I'll only call as a last resort. You know, situations can be unpredictable, and maybe either of us might need help." "Okay," Katya replied. Once he returned home, he no longer found joy in his wife's presence, who excitedly greeted him upon his arrival. His thoughts were consumed by the nurse and how he could see her again. A week passed since his discharge from the hospital, and Andrew felt restless. He contemplated going back to the hospital just to catch a glimpse of Katya. However, he understood that he wouldn't be admitted without valid reasons for hospitalization. That's when an idea struck him. Andrew realized that he couldn't extinguish the consuming feeling he had for the girl, so he decided to take a desperate measure. He called Katya and said, "Hi, I hope you recognize my voice. It's the former patient from room 38. Well, here's the thing. I need injections. I'm asking for your help." "But you just got out of the hospital, didn't you? What does that have to do with me? You can get injections at the clinic," the young woman responded. "You're right, but I would like you to administer them. I know it sounds strange, but I'm begging you to do it, and I'll compensate you for the trouble," he pleaded. "All right," Katya agreed. Andrew meticulously planned everything, taking unpaid leave from work and informing Katya of the specific time to come over, when his wife would be absent and the children at school. He didn't consider his actions despicable. His mind was completely consumed by the nurse with the enchanting cornflower eyes. At the appointed hour, Katya arrived, oblivious to the trap that awaited her. The owner of the apartment greeted her, wordlessly pulling her into an embrace and showering her with kisses. At first, the girl froze, unable to comprehend the situation, but then she began to struggle and scream. Yet it seemed as if Andrew didn't hear anything. He only wanted one thing and believed that this encounter would ensure their eternal togetherness. Their intimate moment was abruptly interrupted by his wife, who had returned home early due to feeling unwell. Marina quickly assessed the entire situation, casting a scornful glance at her husband. Without uttering a word, she helped Katya fix her disheveled clothes. As soon as the girl fled out the door, Marina muttered under her breath, "No need for explanations. It's over. I'll file for divorce myself," and she proceeded to gather her belongings. In that moment, the realization dawned upon her as to why her husband had grown distant recently, but she no longer cared. Her mind was made up. Now Andrew sat alone, pondering why everything had unfolded in this manner. He placed the blame solely on Katya, believing that it was her very presence that had ensnared his heart. He also couldn't fathom why his wife couldn't understand him, why she couldn't handle the situation, and instead chose to leave with the children. Andrew struggled to comprehend it all and convinced himself that he was merely a victim of circumstances.